looking for the king of podcasts? You're at the wrong channel. Looking for good ideas for life? You are far from good hands. If you think the listener is always right, you are far from the right place. Hosted by a Northeasterner by birth, a rebel by choice. If you want a host that floats between love and madness, then play on and listen to Crazy Train Radio.
What up, Crazy Train Radio?
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
I love scotch. I love scotch. Scotchy, scotch, scotch. Here it goes down into my belly.
Don't mess with me, I'm one crazy mofo.
Hey, I know we have a lot of horror fans that listen to our shows, and I know things have been tough for everybody across the board these past 6 or 7 months with what's been going on in the real world. But I wanted to make a suggestion to you horror fans, because I know part of the normal routine year in and year out is to attend different conventions to meet some of your favorite horror stars. However, none of us have been able to do that because of obvious reasons. But I do have a little suggestion for you. SignatureHorror.com. Now, some may ask, what is that? Well, they obtain autographs for the fans from some of their favorite stars, from some of their favorite franchises, whether it be the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and many more. They have different options, such as, besides getting their autographs, you can do live Zoom calls with your favorite stars. You can do personalized videos for people, greetings of some sort. They just have many options. So if you're looking to spend some money that you may have spent at conventions, check them out and see the options they have. SignatureHorror.com. That's right, SignatureHorror.com.
Are you annoyingly even keel? E-methamine could be right for you.
I have a disease, alright? I need help!
E-methamine lets you get gagged up on whooped chicken parts without yellowing one's teeth. Contact your doctor today if you experience the following.
Oh my God!
Increases in blood flow, boost in testosterone, ending of erectile dysfunction.
You're naughty.
This medicine is made for extreme cases of being even keel or having extreme depression.
Oh, come on!
Side effects include fits of rage, acne, bleeding in folks around you, whooping cough, hallucinations, comas, trouble swallowing, decrease in semen, increasing amounts of selling yourself, amnesia, night terrors, higher mortgage rates, and increased sensations in not having suicidal urges.
Oh my. Hey, I'm Les Thatcher, and you're listening to Crazy Train Radio.
Hey folks, it's your least favorite host in the podcast world, the Croc, Jonathan Steele.
And I'm Elena, your favorite host from the Emerald Isles.
And boy, do we have a good one for you today.
Welcome back here. I'm just, the bystander, Crazy Train Radio, but I wanted to bring aboard this time a longtime friend of mine, actually one of the first guys to ever contribute to the newsletters, but somebody with history dating back to the 50s. He has done everything in wrestling, obviously world-class caliber wrestler, booker, announcer. Most people know him from Smoky Mountain, but he did so much more. He was in The Office in Atlanta and probably a zillion other promotions. He's in the Knoxville, Tennessee Wrestlers and Athletes Hall of Fame and so much more. The great Les Thatcher. Les, thanks for doing this. I know I've been nagging you for a while. And I said earlier, you are one of our last beloved links to the territories with all his marbles intact.
Well, I'm not sure if all the marbles are intact, but yeah, it becomes scary for me, Mike. I'm 80 years old. My health is good. I had my COVID, and it kicked my butt, no doubt about it. But I've had both my shots now, and still wearing my mask, still trying to be a good guy. But anyway, wow, this the business has gotten crazy. I mean, it has, but it's always been a bit crazy. But it's gotten crazier, I guess. Is that the way to say it?
It sure as hell has been a crazy and gotten crazier.
Because we just learned last night that probably Flair's daughter, Ashley, who wrestles as Charlotte Flair, is now off WrestleMania, and her significant other, Andrade, who was a great superstar in Mexico. I mean, this guy was in main events there, and then when CMLL Paco Alonso would send him to Japan, he was in semi-mains over there for New Japan, etc. And for him to feel like he finally got his, they finally released him. He was begging for that because they haven't used him since God knows when.
October.
Yeah. And so because he's paired with Charlotte, it's one of those things. And so now she was taken off the posters, which like everybody from Jim Cornette on down has been commenting on, when taken off the WrestleMania poster, it pretty much means you're not going to be on it because she was like centrally placed. And so the business is crazy. We were just talking about for WrestleMania, like the ticket prices and the ancillary events. I mean, I think the top tickets are $250 to $500. And it may not even be WrestleMania, may be more, and they give you the chair, the souvenir chair, and that might just be at stuff like Fastlane from last night. So it might be quite a bit more, but puts it in the realm of unaffordable when wrestling is, you and I were saying, and I remember top tickets at my home base. I had two home bases, Los Angeles Olympic LaBelle Promotion, a Hollywood office, and San Francisco Roy Shire, Northern California. And ticket prices were $5 for adults, $250 for kids. They were only elevated to $750 for adults when the NWA champion, whether it was Kiniski or Funks, etc., came into town. And now with it this way, I don't get it. But the telling thing is that all of the shenanigans and rigmarole WD, and I'm not criticizing, WWE had to do to open up Mania. So I think, Jonathan, only 25,000 fans max allowed both nights. So they were going to put tickets on sale, and that's, changed. They've had to alter it and lay it on out for weeks on end. And there's only a couple of matches even announced, less than 3 weeks out from WrestleMania. And, they've had to scale back. They wanted to have, I think, 55,000 fans each night. Now it's only going to be 25, and they're not having the easiest time moving those tickets because it's still sort of a dangerous time. And we see on the news, all of the spring breakers, they're having to call the riot police, throwing tear gas at those kids going nuts without masks.
You know what I think about that when I see that, the stuff going on in Miami? I thought, I won't be alive to see it, but some of those idiots without masks, drunk out of their minds, will be running this country in a number of years. Right?
Some have.
No, it's Mania's lost some of its buzz. I mean, it's still an important thing. There's no two ways about it. And I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people go to the Super Bowl, not because they're big football fans or because their favorite team is necessarily there, but a lot of people that can afford to do that, do it just to say, I went to the Super Bowl. And I think a lot of people go to Mania for the same reason. I don't think necessarily that it's more about being Mania and about the the activities going on around it, plus the independent shows and stuff like that. I think a lot of people go for the atmosphere and the several days, and Mania is now part of that. But when we're talking about Mania first started, it was all about that show and a couple of the top matches. I mean, the rest was basically filler. But it's lost its luster, but then they're booking people different. When Mania first started, you had 3 or 4 top baby faces, 3 or 4 top heels, and they were feuding. And, I mean, they were interchangeable guys, too, but they worked their way up the card. Now, when I watch a show, and you mentioned, I've been a booker, I've been a wrestler, I've been a trainer, I've been, I've done everything in this business but get rich, and it's too late for that. But I watch, and I think, are any of these guys really, when I say over, I don't mean does somebody like them? And, of course, you're hearing all the piped-in noise and stuff now anyway, crowd of reaction and so forth. But are they really, is anybody over like Shawn Michaels or over like Bret Hart or over like Steve Austin or over like Rock? Am I making sense? I hope.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
They're not, it's a cast of characters, and the characters are more important than the matches sometimes, right?
Well, and then I'm going to shut up and let Jonathan talk away because he's been to some Manias. I want to see if he's been as exhausted as I have. And at least for me, for Japan magazines primarily, having to try to cover all those things. And WWE usually, for the last few years, they try to make it difficult for those ancillary groups, unrelated, like Impact or Ring of Honor or New Japan or Chikara or any of those things, or the WrestleCon itself, the signings with non-WWE,
right,
etc. They block out the hotels. So depending on the city, but I know that was true in New Orleans. The other ancillary events, like even Santa Clara, San Jose in 2015, had to be miles and miles away, sometimes an hour to go see the Ring of Honor show. So, because they wanted it just to be, and it can't be now, just the Hall of Fame, the NXT stuff, and then Mania itself. And they're all interchangeable cogs, was my point. And I'm talking about, like, if Charlotte Flair is not on this Mania, they've just popping in Rhea Ripley tonight in her place, and she'll be the one getting the shot against Asuka instead. So these wrestlers are interchangeable cogs as opposed to having a feud play out. The guys not touch each other for like 3.5 months, which what you want, classic in our day. But let me shut up and throw it to Jonathan. But my point is, a lot of these guys today, they don't have the aura. Even if some of the guys that really weren't perhaps the greatest workers, but they had skill sets in other areas in our era, the 70s in particular, 60s, early 80s, a magic time. They just had that aura. Whether you were Dick the Bruiser or whoever, Sheik Ed Farhat, you had that aura, and that was box office when they were at their peak. When they were.
Let me cut you off now, and I'm going to say something. Then we're going to actually give Jonathan a chance to talk. Right? Okay. I'm being a smart ass. Mike knows me. I was born as smart ass. No, you're right, and it's. But then the whole thing is, Now it's more about the characterization, and it's not about building. Well, here's an example. Christian just signed with AEW, right? And the first night there are talking about being a contender for their title. He just got there. He spent 15 minutes there, basically, right? To me, the way you bringing him in, he does have a background, but if you're going to get him over, let him say, wait a minute, I don't want to be shoved into anything. I understand. I'm proud of my legacy. I'm proud of my history, but I'm here with a new company. I'm ready, and I want to prove myself, and let him work his way up to that title shot. Give the people, there's nothing to it. Back when I was a kid, I started Jonathan in 1960. So I've been on this goofy grind for almost 61 years. But you know, guys had you built to something. And an old timer told me way back in the early 60s, he said, you know, kid, you go to a strip club, the girls don't come out naked and put their clothes back on. There's a reason for that. There's nothing to anticipate. And that is my point, that today there's very little to anticipate because you've seen it all on television 15 times before it ever gets to a big pay-per-view. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So
I remember hearing Jesse Ventura speak on something similar as far as having that apex.
Yeah.
But I want to answer Mike's question first. He brought up my way as far as attending manias. And I was at two different ones 10 years apart. One in Phoenix, as I was telling him. What was it? Taker Michaels 2. But then I was just recently at the one in New York, 35. And as a fan, it was night and day as far as the excitement and having an attraction, where in Phoenix it was like, oh, I want to see Taker. I don't know how long he's going to be. I want to see Sean. I want to, you know, there were certain attractions you wanted to see.
Right.
In New York, it was like, there was all the pomp and circumstance, but it was like, who am I here to see? Not to say there wasn't good talent, but it's like, there wasn't that one or two people that got you your juices flowing.
Right. Well, you know, part of that I think is what they call even booking now, right? You beat me 2 weeks, I'll beat you 2 weeks. So nobody is, that's what I'm saying. Nobody is over. And I'm going to use another example here as well. And it covers not just WWE, it covers every major promotion out there. Back when Dusty passed away, I had some young guys, you know, talking to me about, well, you were wrestling at that time and you know, watch him, you know, that whole American Dream thing build and stuff. And I said, yeah, I sure did. And you know, all the things that got him over, but the one thing you guys aren't talking about, and they said, what? I said, well, to start with, in the mid-'70s, there was only one Dusty on the show, meaning that was the big gimmick. The rest of the guys, I mean, there may be like Wahoo as an Indian or something, but everybody else was a wrestler with a first and last name. Today, the bookers, the owners, the writers, whoever the hell's running everything, they're more concerned, Jonathan, what's your gimmick? Mm-hmm. I'm not asking you, can you work, Jonathan? What's your gimmick? Mm-hmm. Right? Everybody has a gimmick. Exactly. So no gimmick sticks out. It's just like, you know, back in the day, well, I'll give you another great example of the differences. If you went into the Carolinas in the 70s, they usually kept 50 guys on the roster, 50 or maybe 50 or 55. Anyway, if you'd never been there before, they didn't know you. You know, you get and they'll say, what do you use for a finish? And you'll say, I use sleeper. No, you don't. Johnny Weaver uses sleeper. Well, no, you don't use that either. Meaning that if I have a finish, I have a finish. Everybody else on that card, they don't use it. Nobody kicks out of it. You see where I'm going with this?
You built to that top level with that move.
When Johnny Weaver put the sleeper on a heel, people started putting their coats on and knew it was time to go home. Mm-hmm. And so today I call it the stupid time of everybody's smart, which means the guy that says everybody's smart really isn't. And my point there is, gentlemen, and I'm on my I'm on my pedestal now. It's everybody's, when they say everybody's not, I don't care that everybody knows wrestling is predetermined. I know the TV series The Blacklist is predetermined, but James Spader is such a great actor. The stories are so good. I'm dialed in from start to finish. If you watch Justified on FX, the babyface United States Marshal, the actors, I don't forget Timothy whatever, but Raylan Gibbons, they got him over like $1 million, but it was about him, and everybody else was a support, right? And we don't have that anymore. Everybody's a gimmick. Everybody dives. Everybody kicks out of everybody else's finish. So what actually means something?
Can I add, let me interrupt, as I'm prone to do, and I apologize to people. I'm using an iPhone, so I'm moving it around with my hand instead of my wife's laptop. But Brian Cage, good friend of mine. I saw him start out in Modesto, California. He was on all of our California indie promotions. They're not indie. I mean, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla.
He worked for me a few times when I did that tournament in LA in 2012 and 13 too. Mike, go ahead.
Tremendous guy, phenomenal and all of that. But, and I'm not criticizing him, but he was selling shirts at Pro Wrestling Guerrilla and APW in Northern California. And his shirt was the gimmick he was going by, "Get my shit in." And that is the thing that Les and I have been talking privately about, and no secret out there that it's bothersome to me that since the Savage Steamboat thing at Mania 3, where they, Randy had like everything, 293 moves in exact order, and he and Steamboat had to memorize it. That's what it's about now, and it's
and shouldn't be.
Talk about their match in the back. They want to get their shit in, as opposed to the fine, beautiful, wonderful art of wrestling, which was gauge the audience, react, go on the fly, speak to each other, and do it that way organically, instead of having memorized all the stuff, and of course to highlight all the various spots you do. So it's a spots fest, and I'm sure, I would hope Jim Cornette would agree with us, the genius of wrestling, that being Jim, in that there's like no psychology, there's no storytelling. I'm sure you have the overt storytelling.
Can I throw in another comparison now and then type of thing? This television with no crowd, with no people, right? And if you watched, I've had this conversation with several people. I think guys from my generation pick up on it a lot quicker than the kids. But if you notice, the guys would hit something and then they'd stop, and they were hesitant now, not for a minute or anything, but they're waiting for something. What the hell are they waiting on? I mean, that was the question I first started asking. Then I realized they're waiting on the pop because that's what they're working for. Now, I said this, guys from my generation, if they were transported or teleported and were young enough and would put in the same situation, we would handle it better than the young guys. And the only reason for that is that we never worked for the pop. We worked for the finish and to tell the story. Now, if you're a babyface and you got cheered throughout the match, you were happy with that, but that wasn't what you were shooting for to begin with. And if you were the heel, you were wanting people to throw popcorn boxes at you and boo you, but that wasn't. You were working to, you started at the beginning of the match to get to the finish, and it was like start with the foreplay, build to the climax. And so we could have worked without. Believe me, I've worked in a few small towns where I wish that was almost like there were no people. But I don't know if I'm making my point or not, but it was a different, so we weren't working for the pop. So we wouldn't have stopped in the middle of this, right? And that's a big difference too. They're working for the pop and it's not about telling a story. I'll tell you what, and I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but last Wednesday night, Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa.
I did.
They stole the friggin' show. Now, Women in Blood. I've heard. I'm not a slice and dice guy. Listen, I've done my share of juice in my career, but it was all for a reason. I'm not interested in just seeing guys cut themselves up. But these girls went from something that was actually, I wasn't expecting anything, to they had me sitting up and thinking, damn. And the thing that made me do that it was the way they went about it. It was their facial expressions, their body. They were serious. There wasn't any stupid comedy, with the exception of Baker's valet or whatever, her assistant there, that went through the one table. Other than that, the match built just the way I was talking about. Start with the foreplay and build to the climax. But those girls, they blew every guy on that show out of the damn park last Wednesday night. Now, can they do that again? Don't know. Maybe. But somebody with a very little experience would just say, well, let's have them do it again. No. Sometimes things like that you can't program it like that. It's not automatic. I've had matches with somebody where our feet were barely touching the floor. We couldn't have made it. And that's what I saw with these girls. They couldn't have made a mistake if they'd actually set out to. Can they do that again next week? Probably not.
It was tremendous. I had to watch the thing 3 times because I was taking notes for Japan and reporting on everything. But yeah, that was tremendous. I actually talked to her earlier in the day on Busted Open. I was asked to come on right before she came on. And I brought up the fact in dentistry, we have our own Carney speak, which is a lost art in wrestling, but we have our own way of speaking. So like our patients don't know what we're talking about. If I say a class 5 foil or alginate, or I call, you know what our slang is, Les and Jonathan, for dentures is burgers. And she laughed at hearing that later because it's true on the East Coast, where she has a DMD degree, which she can use to finesse doing the hand signs that Eli Drake used to do for, cheap heat. And west of Louisiana, it's called a DDS, which I have. But let me get into, you talked about training people, and I forgot to mention this, but you've trained people, over decades, and a lot of people remember you would bring in guys, Harley Race and Steamboat. I think you guys, I don't know how long you guys were paired together, the giant triumvirate, the Gold Dust trio of training.
Well, we did a training manual together, the Pro Wrestlers Workout and Instructional Guide by Sports Publishing LLC. But they went out of business, so it's out of print now. But you can still find it on Amazon. But Harley and I first started actually. We were asked to put a camp together for CAC, and we did 4 years of that, and then we got bulldozed out because we were doing too much good, I think. But anyway, that's another story. Yep. But we just, Harley and I had first worked together in 1963. He was 19 years old and I was 22. And, but anyway, we just flowed well together. And then when the first year he did the NOAA camp, the week-long camp in Eldon, Steamer and I, were on the bill with him. And we just, so we worked together, I guess, 3-4 years, and then it got to where Harley couldn't get in the ring, but we still, were able to do stuff. But, the problem today too, is when I do weekend camps now, and I believe me, I'll give you my email address here in a little while, but if someone's interested and might be listening, I do weekend training camps. Anyway, the problem is there's so many bogus trainers. I mean, guys are at a building, get a ring. Hey, I'll train you for $5 a week. And some of these guys, there's more guys out there. I tease Rudy Gonzalez. I said, there become more of them than there are of us. They're going to run over us at some point. These guys who say, well, I've been in the business 15 minutes, I'll train you. And who trained them? There are probably a handful of legitimate trainers in this country that there may be more than that, but the ones that I've worked with, and then there's a million that should be taking lessons themselves, for Christ's sake, guys. That's the other part I think that makes it tough. we, back in the territory days, first of all, I never was in a dressing room that there weren't veterans. And a lot of the kids today, it's just the blind leading the blind, you know? And I was also smart enough when I started that if I got if a veteran came to me and chastised me for my work or critiqued it and was negative, I didn't say, well, I shut my mouth and learned, because if I didn't, he might have shut it for me, right? And the kids today just don't. It's not the same from the cradle to the main roster, and that's why the business has lost something. I think we need to turn it back a little bit, and I don't want to go back to 10-minute headlocks or anything like that. But let's put wrestling back in wrestling and forget all the goofy high spots. You know, here's something I asked these young guys to try to make my point. I said, you remember the first time you saw your wife or your girlfriend naked? Yeah, I do. Remember the 300th time? Don't bother to answer, because I know the answer, because mine would be the same. No, I don't remember. Why? Because it became commonplace. So when I see 15 dives in 5 matches, why would I be excited about a dive? Or every match there's 14 kickouts from everybody else's finish. What's exciting about that? That's the problem, and that's when I go back to where I say everybody's smart. No, when you say that, you're not. Because I knew when I was 9 years old, Roy Rogers really wasn't killing those bad guys, right? But I watched anyway. I think the guys in the ring have gotten to a degree sloppy, because we can do just anything because everybody's smart. But you're not smart if you're saying that and if you're working in that manner.
Les, don't you agree that has ruined the biz? We saw that early on stuff, 91, 92, and then when WCW got going and let the inmates run the asylum, and Sean Waltman, who I love, I've known him forever since his Eddie Sharkey training days, late 80s, but he wears a shirt that says Mizark on it. And Carney is now out there, and it's a regular with even the Johnny Swinger character on Impact. You know, every other word with his character, he's using Carney, Kizarny, and stuff like that, which actually he might be one of the few guys of today still using it. That's a crime that came from, the carnival days, the ad shows, and all of that.
Yes, I speak as Kizarny. He was on a Kizarny with me, is he?
Not today, because I ain't as fast. And you know, the cool thing about Carney is there are nuances depending where you are in the U.S. It's almost like dialects. And then Lucha Mexican Carney is different than Carney in Japan. They actually have it. Okugai is the word for a fan, a mark in Japanese Carney, and so on. So there's all these, it's so cool. A lot of us, I mean, through wrestling, we learned about that and nuances in language, and people in the South might speak differently than the haughty New Yorkers or the New Englanders.
Oh, sure. Well, the kids, I listen to some of the young, I'm using my fingers in quotations now, some of the young wrestlers, and I don't know what the hell they're talking about. I worked so-and-so. No, you didn't. You worked with so-and-so. You work the audience. You didn't work so-and-so. You see, I mean, little things like that. Yeah. I'm not horribly offended by it, but I'm thinking, what the hell? I know I know how to talk. I've been doing it for 61 years like a wrestler, and all of a sudden I'm sitting around with somebody that's 22 years old and I don't understand what the hell he's saying. Of course, I teased Dr. Tom or any of the guys, where I said, we can go in that dressing room and talk Carney and nobody in there will know what the hell we're talking about.
and those are the boys. I saw an older guy, Pepper Gomez, was at an Iron Show, which was sort of the United States version, the sister group of Noah Japan, Misawa's group, where he took all the boys when Mrs. Baba took it over, her husband died, beloved legend, handshake deals, total trust, and then she really ruined it. And so Misawa took all those guys away from Noah. And the same thing happened. Mike Modest, Donovan Morgan, Bison Smith had passed away, who I think Les knew. took everybody from APW and formed Iron, the counterpart, and then those guys would tour for Noah. But Pepper Gumbles was in the locker room, and he heard one of the young boys use the word worker, and he really went off on him, for using that word, because this guy was as green as grass, probably didn't even belong in the locker room with somebody of his caliber. And Bastien was there too that night, and he gave it to the guy, but a little gentler than Pepper would have. So I want to shift gears, and I want Jonathan to talk. So I'm going to throw something. Jonathan, asked Les who broke him into the business. There weren't any schools then. I mean, Dory Sr.'s thing in Amarillo didn't occur until like 1969. So maybe, Jonathan, ask him about that. Let's hear about Les's upbringing and how – I don't even know if Les was he had to have been. I know I've asked him this before. He watched wrestling.
I broke in the very first ever wrestling school.
Tony Santos, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I did start wrestling amateur at 12 in Hawaii. My high school, there was no high school wrestling in Cincinnati where I grew up back then. And so anyway, I wanted to get in the business, and I bugged referees at the matches in Cincinnati, and I drove up to Columbus to Al Half's office and tried to get my foot in the door, and they told me and at the time I didn't need to put some size on. I was about 180 pounds at the time. I needed more experience and so forth, so on. So in a Wrestling Review magazine, I saw this article on Tony Santos's gym in Boston, where if you aspiring young athletes wanted to be professional wrestlers, they could train with Tony for 6 months for $300. So I wrote Tony a letter, and I got a trifold advertising school. In fact, I still have that trifold, by the way, with Tony had handwritten some notes in it for me. And I got on a Greyhound bus in Cincinnati in February 1960 and went to Boston and lived in a rooming house, $10 a week, shared a bathroom, and trained from February till July the 4th was my first match in Blue Hills, Maine, 1960, July the 4th. And I tell young guys, I said, now you realize started in February and didn't get my first match till July the 4th. You know when they smartened me up to the business? And of course, the kids went. July the 4th is when I got smartened up. No, that's a fact. I had started to kind of figure things out because I went with, you both know who Gene Santos is, Rocket Monroe, et cetera. So that's Gene Santazaro, Gene Dundee. Gene was actually Gene had never been in a live match himself at the time, but he helped in the gym and helped train and took the ring to places. And I would go with Gene to the ring, to the shows. We'd set the ring up. We'd get in and work out together, take a shower, go eat, come back, watch the matches, take the ring down, and back to Boston. But they handed me my ass for the first couple weeks. And but yeah, that July the 4th, I was one of Tony's younger boys came over to my room. I was in a rooming house right actually across the street from where the gym was located at that time, and also living there was Ronnie Dupree, Alex Medina, Johnny Mann. Who am I missing here? Pat Patterson. Well, Pat didn't come till the next year. Terry Garvin. Anyway, so first of all, I thought. Tony said, Dad wants to talk to you. I thought, I'm in trouble, right? Why is he asking me into the office in the morning for? So I go over and they sit down with him, and he said, "You got your gear, right? You got shoes and jacket and boot, tights and trunks and stuff, yeah. All right, today's your first day. What? Today you're going to wrestle. Go get your gear and come back." So I went and packed my bag and came back. And so how they had taught us to work, Jonathan, here's the clever thing.
Guys keep beating me to the punch, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, they keep beating the shit out of us, yeah. No, well, I mean, yeah, they enjoyed watching us, try to stretch each other, or they enjoyed getting down with us and but they would have us, they'd say, okay, we want you to have like a professional match now. And since nobody's getting paid and we don't want anybody to get hurt, we want you just to put the holes on. We just don't want you to apply any pressure. So that's how they were teaching us to work, right? How to be loose by take the arm in a double wrist, top wrist lock or a hammer lock, but don't squeeze, don't apply the pressure. But we want you, and that's how they were teaching. So Tony said to me, he said, you know how you you practice matches and you didn't apply pressure? And I said, yes, sir. Well, that's what they're going to do with you today. Didn't tell me that was the way it was supposed to be the rest of my life. That's what we're going to do today. And then the rest of my education between Boston and Blue Hills, Maine, which I'm not sure the distance, probably 250 miles or so. But anyway, in the car was Joe Sasso, who was a young football player from Boston University, who wasn't as green as me, but he'd only been around in the business a year or so, a couple of years maybe. He was driving Bull Montana and Ronnie Hill. And we wrestled at the Blue Hills Fairgrounds. The ring was set up on the racetrack in front of the grandstand. And Ronnie and I worked the opener. Sasso and Bull worked the second match, and we came. Red and I came back against Ronnie and Bull in the main event, and that was the way it started.
Well, let's fast forward a little bit because I'm curious to hear this story, if it's true at all. And I know Mike would know the name. My boy, Jim Barnett, gave you the name Thatcher.
Yes, he did. Well, Milady's Irish. And I honestly, everybody mispronounces it. I mean, Malady. I mean, I'm so accustomed. I answer to anything, right? But anyway, so I wanted to change. Because of the mispronunciation, I wanted to change my name. But in Boston, because of the Irish influence in that area, Tony wanted me to keep that name, obviously. So I did. And it wasn't a big issue up there. So anyway, when I the next started working for Barnett in winter, I guess January, February, March, maybe of '62, and used Milady then, and of course the ring announcers mispronounced it. There's an old print ad from Cobo Hall in Detroit that's got my name on it, and Milady is misspelled on there. And when people put it up on Facebook, I said, and that's why Barnett changed my name. But I didn't realize it upset him so bad. I mean, I was basically accustomed to it. And so one day, Les Ruffin came into the locker room. I guess I've been working for Jim probably 2 months at the time. And he said, the old man's getting tired of people mispronouncing your last name. He wants to call you Les Thatcher. Is that okay? I said, yeah. How do you tell me? Be sure I know how to spell it. So I've been Les Thatcher ever since. Barnett treated me good. I have no, he was demanding, but he paid well. And, I worked for him there, worked for him again in, Les spit it out. I worked for him again in
Australia,
Atlanta, and here in Knoxville. Actually, when he bought Fuller out, I stayed here for a while, and then I came back and ran the tours for Georgia, in Ohio, Michigan, and West Virginia in '82 and '83, which was for Jim and Ole. But yeah, Barnett was he was a character, but he. Paid well. He was good. He was sharp to stack. I had to call when I ran those tours in Ohio, Michigan, and West Virginia. He wanted to know what box office was every night, and I forget exactly right now, guys. It's been a few years, but what time he went to bed? Like he went to bed exactly at midnight or something like that, right? So I had to get box office checked up, numbers, and get on the phone and let him know what the box office was, and then they'd say, Leslie, what are the boys talking about in the locker room? What's the gossip? And I'd say, I don't know, Jim, although I did. But I learned that from my predecessor, Jerry Briscoe. He said, stay off the hot seat. Don't get in the middle of anything. He just say, Jim, I'm so busy, I don't get a chance to pay attention to the gossip in the locker room. But, Jim was, one of the things that the kids today just don't have the opportunity to do. But I realized through 1960 and 1970, I was blessed to have worked with some of the best workers ever in this business. And it's hard not to learn, right? if that's, and some great promoters. And then when I started doing television, realized I've shared a microphone with Gordon Soley, Lance Russell, Bob Cottle, Ed Capral, Charlie Platt, Jim Ross. I don't think I'm missing anybody. And if I haven't, Dutch Mantell was my color guy here for a while. Lou Thez was my color guy when I was doing Mario Savoldi's television up in New England. So if you don't,
wait, Les, you never told me what period was that? The what was he calling it? The ICW? Because of course,
that was in the '80s. That was the late '80s.
Was he a different person than when he brought you, me, Honky Tonk Man, George Steele? I forget who else. Jim Duggan.
Have you ever seen that thing that we did? And I've never seen any of it. I'd love to have a copy of that.
He released it. We were doing voiceover for stuff, and then his primary play-by-play guy had me doing color, and I think we all alternated. And they were overseas.
He promoted a lot of towns up in New England. We did one show in Jersey, I remember. Actually, they came down. I don't know what possessed them to do this, but they came down here to Knoxville and released the World Fair site. And we did several TV shows here. I mean, all in one day, obviously. I mean, we didn't stay here for several days. But we had a hell of a crew there. We had Idol, Gary Hart, Brody, Kevin Sullivan was the booker, had the sheep herders. And we had a hell of a crew up there. I mean, I say, I've been blessed to work with the greatest wrestling announcers of all time. I've worked with some of the greatest workers of all time, and I've helped break a few of those in too. But I've been blessed. I've had a wonderful, wonderful career. I can't deny it.
I want to say, Les, I'll tell you about this maybe on this show with Jonathan at a later. Well, I'll tell it right now very quickly. Dickie Steinborn calls up Barnett in Australia, or no, he called up Dory Jr., who was defending the strap in Australia, something like that. But Dickie did as good, or perhaps slightly better.
Barnett impersonation.
He did the Jim Barnett impression. He calls up. This is what it was. They're in Australia, and he calls up Dory Jr. in Florida, who was then NWA champ, doing Barnett's, everybody knew immediately after like word one when Jim Barnett was talking. And he was like hitting on Dory Jr. at 3 a.m. This is Dickie Steinborn pretending to be the Barnetti to be.
Oh yeah, I do.
You heard that one? That one is
no, but I was just going to say, Dickie called Johnny Doyle at Cobo and imitated Barnett, and I forget who he was wrestling that night, but Bruiser was in the main event at Cobo, and Dickie as Barnett is telling Doyle, Bruiser won't make it. He's had a car wreck and can't get there. He's going to have to substitute the main event.
Jesus Christ.
Yes, the good old days, Jonathan.
Yes, that's good, but that's good.
Bunch of large children, 250-pound children.
Oh yeah, I've heard some stories.
Because Les has trained or finessed so many great people. You definitely had a hand. Well, tell us who you had a hand with, but wasn't Carl Anderson one of your pupils as well as?
Carl started with me. Yes, Shark Boy I trained. Nigel McGuinness I trained. A lot of guys I've my fingerprints on a lot of guys. Adam Cole will tell you that he's learned a lot from me. Drew Gulak. Who else? Jamie Noble, Rosie Umaga, Charlie Haas, Shannon Moore. Funny thing is, I guess I was training guys before I knew I was training guys, because Scott Casey, Bill White, and J.J. Dillon all give me credit for advancing their careers. So,
wow.
I'm a pain in the ass, quite frankly, guys. So that's you got to be that to be a good coach.
True.
Your email or your website to to promote these weekend seminars and everything and anything, Les Thatcher?
Yeah, okay. You can reach me, lesthatcher28@gmail.com. I do one-day seminars, but I prefer weekend training camps simply because we can get more done. And on the weekends, I cover tag team, singles, psychology, nutrition, weight training, whatever the law allows. And we go, this is like from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. both days, and with a break, an hour break for lunch. And, we cover the whole spectrum of professional wrestling. So feel free to contact me, and I'll be more than happy to get with you on the details and let you know exactly what I do, what I cost, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Got a few other projects out there along with Joe Dombrowski. We have Wrestling from the Heartland, Lost Developmental Territory tapes, volumes 1 and 2, both approximately 6 hours of matches. This is when I had a contract with WWE. So on this, there's a lot of guys that are top stars already, guys who are still working their way up. You'll see John Cena before he'd ever had a major match on Raw. Nigel, a lot of top guys are on there. Those are both sets. They're both 2-disc sets. And like I say, it's over 6 hours on both of them. They can be had at joe-dombrowski.com or prowrestlinglibrary.com. And Joe has a big selection of a lot of stuff there. But what we got coming out, I'm really excited about, is in April, there will be a 4-disc set of the 4 Brian Pillman Memorial shows that I promoted in Cincinnati, 98, 99, 2000, 2001. With all but a few of the matches from 99 will be on there, complete, with sound bites from guys like Jericho and Mark Henry, guys who worked on the show. Brian Jr. and I sit down and, talk about his memories as a young boy, of those shows. And that's a 4-disc set, and that will be over 12 hours of content. So, and like I say, that's also going to be available. And there will be press releases for those out on Facebook and Twitter. And like I say, joe-dombrowski.com or prowrestlinglibrary.com. And all 3 sets, the Pillman will be available in the middle of next month, and the other 2 are available now.
We've never had this conversation about, I spent a lot of time with Pillman, and you did so much after he passed, before and after with these things. Also honoring Brian Hildebrand, who was another great friend of ours. For anyone, yes. Brian would call at 2 a.m. and want to talk wrestling and wake people up, but I never said no because it was Brian. Dr. Mean Mark Curtis, such a wonderful guy out of the
beautiful, yes. Great person. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, we did 2 benefits for his wife to help her pay the doctor bills for the cancer. We did 2 fantasy camps in 2000 and 2001, the day before the Pillman show. So, yeah.
Before there was crowdsourcing, I've said this many times, there was Les Thatcher. Helping people. I have to send you photos of January 4th, 1991. Benoit had gotten a large suite at Inoki's Keo Plaza Hotel, and Jericho was working for War, an opposition promotion, Junichiro Tenryu's group, and then I was there working for WCW for that the later upcoming Dome show. Anyway, Chris Benoit let us room. He let us have the 2 other bedrooms. So, but I got to send you photos of particularly Pillman, March 21st, 91. That was his first trip to Japan, I believe, and in the 6-man opener for that pay-per-view capped by Flair Fujinami, and then a lot of the Flair Liger matches over there, Pillman Liger matches over there, way before they came into WCW later on. I think 92, 93 was when that happened. But also another guy you have your fingers on is John Moxley. Isn't that correct too? Ohio boy?
I was one of the guys. I took the rough edges off. He started with me and stayed at HWA once I sold the company, and then I went back in on the back end and polished him and got him in shape to go, because they had told him he needed to put on some size, so I got him on a good nutritional diet and weight training, and that's something I do as well. I did competitive bodybuilding from age 47 to 54 in masters competition. So anyway, John is one of my subjects, I guess. Yeah, I've worked with John. And B.J. Whitmer, who was big with Ring of Honor for a long time, and who's a producer now with AEW.
And the guy known as Eli Drake, I forget what his real name.
Sean Ricker.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Sean started at HWA as well. Yes, absolutely.
Wow. And those guys were roommates there. I'm going to shut up and because I know time's running short. I'll let Jonathan talk. I just want to throw in, you were one of the very first wrestlers who participated with a newsletter. It was my newsletter, the Tollus Brothers, early 70s. You were in the Atlanta office, which I think you would return to many, many times. But just names there. And I'm leading up to something. Names there like Big Bill Dromo. I think Robert Fuller and Bullet Bob Armstrong were the tag champs at that point. A little bit later.
Well, Buddy Colt was there. Sputnik was in for a while. This was when I was in the office there, that was during the war, Gunkel.
That's right. I was going to ask you about that war with Andy Gunkel.
Yeah, 72 and 73. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, who sent the Trojan horse Tom Ernesto there? Was that promoter Paul Jones, not to be confused with the wrestler Paul Jones?
You know what? I don't know what Tom's deal was. Tom was one of the reasons Ann pulled away, I think, and he was her booker. But I want to tell you, this is the craziest story in the world. Leo Garibaldi was a dear friend, but more importantly, was a great mentor, and to me, one of the best damn bookers ever, period, end of story. But my first day in the Atlanta office, I'd met Leo in 66 when I wrestled in Atlanta. And anyway, so we knew each other before I went down to do the TV with Gordon and work in the office and handle the PR and stuff. But that first day in the office, Leo said, let's go to lunch and catch up. Okay, so, but he told me that day at lunch, he said, regardless of this war, the guy that started it all will be booking in this office in the next few years. And that was Tom Ernesto. And guess what? Leo was right.
Well, because Leo was just incredible. All that history with his dad in Los Angeles. He came in to save the territory. Very briefly, Louis Tillet had almost killed it after our golden twins, that being Joel Strongbow and Charlie Mr. Moto, quit on LaBelle. And then Louis Tillet came in, almost killed the territory, putting himself over, pissing off John Tollus, who quit and walked away for like the millionth time from LaBelle. And then after him, who comes in to save the territory is Leo Garibaldi, who we all loved, but he couldn't even take all the behind-the-scenes machinations of Chavo Guerrero and left. And who do we get after that? Tom Ernesto, who almost killed our territory. He might have been great.
Wow. One of the stories I tell kids about, everybody that started with me knows how to call a match in the ring on the fly, or they wouldn't have finished with me, because that's what I expect out of them. But my first match in Atlanta was on a Friday night at the old auditorium, and it was Roger Kirby and I, one of the cousins. That's when we actually started the cousin thing. Kirby and Hall was in Florida at the time, but he had just left Atlanta. Anyway, so we're in the old auditorium Friday night. Leo said, Les, I'm not planning on just beating you, but this heel team is going to be my top heel team for a long time here. I'm just priming them and getting ready to build them. I got to get them over. I said, okay, not a problem, So now I don't know to this day if Kirby had ever worked with them at this time or not. And I'll tell you the team is here in a minute. So anyway, we get to finish, and Leo, as you know, not only booked but refereed. And he was in our match. And it was one of those nights which you couldn't have made a mistake if you just set out to, right? Your feet were barely touching. And we had that old auditorium rocking. Wow. And Leo comes around in the middle of the match and says, We're not wasting this. We're bringing it back. I'm changing the finish, and here's a new finish. Telling the two guys in the ring, and then conveyed it to the babyface and heel on the outside. And without missing a beat, we switched finishes and brought it back next week. And that team was Lars and Gene Anderson.
Wow.
Yeah, and I ask these kids today, if somebody decides in the middle of your match you're going 100 miles an hour, we're changing the finish, what are you going to do? Call timeout and go back to the dressing room and talk for another half hour? Or what?
Yeah, I don't think today's kids, their heads would be spinning. They memorize it. And maybe we'll talk about that at another time, because I wanted to talk about all of the great tag teams. You know, they talk about today, or whoever's going to claim such and such team is the greatest kids today. No. We had two guys that couldn't even work. They were the shits in the ring, but they were magic as a tag team, the Valiant Brothers. And hey, I've said this to Jimmy right to his face. I love Jimmy and John, God rest his soul, but so many others. Blackjack's Lansing.
You know what I call Jimmy? Jimmy is the first sports entertainer ever.
And there he had it all in all other areas. Go look at the Valiant Brothers 73-74 for Vince Sr. against like Bruno and Pedro. You know, amazing.
I'll tell you a funny story about the first time I ever met Jimmy. I'm in Nashville. We're at the Nashville Old Fairgrounds Coliseum, and Nick Goulas comes in the dressing room. Len Rossi, Dennis Hall, Kenny Lucas, myself. And he comes in, because Len was kind of helped Nick out. Nick would bounce things off of Len. Len was a mainstay there, kind of like Johnny Weaver was in Charlotte. Anyway, he's, look at this, Len, got this boy's picture. Look at this boy, big blonde, 250, 260, in shape. Look at that kid. Boy, we can bring him in, and we'll do this with him and do that with him, put this belt on him and do this and do that. And Nick is just on a run, right? And we're all looking over his shoulder and look at this picture. The kid's clean shaven and handsome and the whole 9 yards. And he's rattling on. And finally, Len said, wait a minute, Nick, what? He said, can he work? Nick looked at him. He said, hell, boy, I don't know. And that was Jimmy Valiant. So, yeah. It's been a great 61 years, fellas. It has. Yeah. And listen, we'll do this again sometime.
Okay, because I haven't even touched barely anything that I wanted to bring up. But I wanted to at least bring this up because I was thinking about it based on a conversation that Mike, Supermouth, Dave were talking from the Detroit.
Berninski?
Yes.
Yeah, Dave, you know Dave.
Sure, I know Dave.
So I got thinking about it, and it wasn't on the episode, but we were talking about Hall of Fames and things like that, and even a little bit here at the beginning of this episode. But
right.
I was just thinking about it, and maybe you guys can explain it to me, where if you go to baseball or football or other sports, they base Hall of Fame talent on statistics. What do you guys look at as far as a Hall of Fame talent for professional wrestling? Because
I would guess everybody's different, Jonathan. For me, it's important that they draw. I know that's one of the important things for a lot of people that have never wrestled. To me, that's important, but it's also important to me how they were mechanically. Were they good leaders in the ring? You know, and that sort of thing. Was as important to me as did they draw a lot of people, because there were some great workers. You know, realize some of the greatest workers of all time were the mid-card baby faces and heels that had to get the guys who were going to the top ready and get them over, but they had to keep themselves in good enough shape to continue to do that with other people and stay in that territory for any length of time. So, exactly. But all that was important to me. It's mechanics and the whole ball of wax, I guess, is what I know a lot of people, well, this guy, now I know in Meltzer's Hall of Fame, there's been talk that the Andersons never went anywhere. And I said, where the hell do you have to? First of all, if you worked the territory days and could stay in one place for the rest of your life, you were crazy if you didn't. But the point was they did work other places. But between Gene and Ole, after Lars left, They didn't have to go anyplace but Atlanta and Charlotte, Charlotte and Atlanta, Atlanta and Charlotte, Charlotte and Atlanta. So why move to 5,000 other territories when you don't have to? And did they draw? You're damn right they did.
Or if you look at folks like you said, not really going to other territories, a Jerry Lawler in Memphis or Captain Lou in New York, you know.
Sure.
If you can get that gig, why pass it up?
Well, you know, once I got into the Southeastern, I was down. My first venture in the Southeast was in '63. I was in Charlotte for a while, but then when I came south to Atlanta in '66, from that point on, I thought, from Atlanta, Kirby and I went to Louisiana for Lee Fields, then back into Mobile, then into Tampa, then back into Charlotte. Then I said, you know, these are all relatively short trips and they're good territories. Why do I need to go anywhere else? I had the opportunity to go to Oklahoma, had the opportunity to go to talking about L.A. When Leo was out there, I could have gone to L.A. and didn't. Could have gone up to Portland, but didn't because I didn't need to, right? I saved a lot of money. Plus, the good thing about the Southeast, there weren't 2 feet of snow in the winter. You got very few shows canceled in the winter. That was something to think about. Realize if you lived in Minneapolis and worked the AWA in the winter, in the trunk of your car when you set out for Mankato or for one of the Canadian towns or something, you had foul weather gear in your trunk because you weren't sure you weren't going to get stuck on the road. I mean, seriously. Yeah. So a lot of things I think come into play. And I wouldn't get into, there are some people I think in Hall of Fames that I'm not sure why they're there.
There's a couple I can think of.
But they're there anyway. It's a lot of, let's face it, in this day and age, believe me, it's a lot of politics. Want me to tell you the truth? And I'm going to say this, and you call it bragging, but it ain't bragging if you can back it up. I've excelled as a wrestler. I've excelled as a broadcaster. I've excelled at magazines, publishing, editing, designing. The Briscoes and I put out the first ever pro wrestling T-shirt in 1972. In fact, you can still get that at Pro Wrestling Tees, a Briscoe Booster T-shirt. Check it out. And training people. Some of my training drills are used at the Performance Center, WWE, the Japanese promotion with the girls, and several of the top, and many of the top trainers use my stuff. So, do I think I've earned a spot in somebody's Hall of Fame? You bet your ass. But I probably won't be there. Why? Because I don't play politics and I don't kiss ass well. I just don't.
But I also want to bring up a name you guys brought up earlier in the conversation, who just passed away, Buddy Colt. You guys got any good Buddy Colt stories?
I don't have any good stories except he was a hell of a heel. I'm surprised he may have been considered for the NWA World title. I don't know.
No, he was. Mike Graham said that Bobby Shane and Buddy Colt. Bobby Shane had amazing history in Atlanta too, but the King Buddy Colt were Eddie Graham that it was ready to put up the bond. This is before he took over from Munchnick as NWA president later. But before the Plane Act, those two. I mean, can you imagine? Not one. It was usually just one from a territory, like Forrest Siegel in Houston, and then later Paul Bosch putting up Pepper Gomez. No, these were two guys at the same time that Eddie Graham was high on.
Yeah. The only time I was ever in the ring with Buddy is Leo put me over in the first ever 2-ring battle royal in Atlanta in '73. And I don't even know if I locked up with Buddy in the ring, but actually I've never worked with him. That's where we first met. And it was a mutual respect thing, and we became friends. Recent years, we saw each other at like Mobile, or there was a big thing in Tampa back in '05, and we at Charlotte. But we stayed in touch on Facebook. We both love our fur babies and the business. But Buddy was a good guy, class act, and he's that plane wreck. Realize Bobby Shane was afraid of water, and as far as I know, that's the first single-engine small aircraft he was ever in, because he was afraid of those too.
He came into L.A. his one and only time, and they sadly didn't educate people as to who he was, his history, like Y or St. Louis, or obviously mega heel in the South.
He was in Nashville. He was in Nashville for a while, and he and I worked partners in several of the towns. And he wanted me to go with him as one of the Shane brothers to Frisco. But when he called Roy, he was already tag teamed up and didn't have a spot for us, and it just never materialized. And then Bobby turned heel, and I didn't. And so anyway, but yeah, I first met Bobby when I was working St. Louis TV at the Chase. His dad was a referee, and Bobby was just carrying jackets, for Christ's sake.
You know, his surviving family came when I threw that Sam Muchnick 3-day convention for the boys that Thez was MC. All the boys trans themselves in. I didn't have to spend a penny. They put themselves up, not because of me, but because of Sam, how much respect they had for him. The Briscoes, Terry Frank, Penny came in. But what I was going to say about Bobby Shane, he comes into L.A. This was just weeks before the plane crash. And he's on his way to, it was Baba, so it was All Japan. And he has a squash where he came out with his full outfit, the crown, the whole wonderful shtick, very colorful. And he puts over Ed Carpentier. But they had a match, it must have gone 14 minutes for TV, that was out of this world that people still talk about. And people were going, who is this guy? They had no clue. We all knew who he was. But out of this world, it was a styles clash, similar to what I was going to say when I came in there to visit family in Calhoun, Georgia, and I went to the Atlanta City Auditorium. It was the Christmas show, 74, Blassie and Bill Watts, and Fred was just there to visit family or something at Christmas. He had some family there, obviously family in St. Louis. He didn't want to bump for Watts, and Cowboy was pissed off. Like the whole match, you could tell something was going on, and they weren't communicating. Do you remember that? Because I think you were there when that thing happened.
No, I wasn't. I don't remember it.
74, you might have gone back to maybe the Fields or someone else, but it was one of the it was second only to the other weirdest styles clash match I ever shot. Again, involving Blassie against Billy Robinson in the main event at the HIC in Honolulu, where Fred refused to do anything Billy wanted to do.
Fred was a character. I worked with Fred when he was in for Barnett in the early 60s. On TV a couple of times. That, yeah, he was a character. He'd say, "Hey, guess what? What, Fred? I signed a contract with MGM. Really? Yeah. Now if I can just get them to sign it." That was Ed's. That was his jokes, right? Freddie, those kind of jokes Freddie told. But yeah, good guy. Good guy. Yeah.
The Twizzler. It was his take on the twist in '64 on the Dick Van Dyke Show. You've got to see that because it's a classic in wrestling. Fred Blassie, and then he picks up an airplane spins Dick Van Dyke. You've seen that episode?
No, I never have. YouTube wrestlers and TV shows. Did you know Johnny Heidemann broke Jackie Gleason's arm?
No,
broke something. Well, Gleason had wrestling skits on his Saturday night show about once a year. And he got the wrestlers from the New York office. And Heidemann told me the story. Johnny and three wrestlers, and then Gleason was, whatever his character was the fourth wrestler in a tag match. And I forget what it was. He kept saying, "I want you to do this." And Johnny said, "I don't think you can take the. I want to do it." And Johnny said, "I'm going to tell the star of the show, right, who's paying us, that I won't do what he wants done." So whatever it was, and I think either cracked his collarbone or his arm. And Johnny I thought he said, "I almost had a heart attack. My God, I'll never get booked again," right? I just broke Jackie Gleason's arm, for Christ's sake. But yeah, that's back then. I remember seeing as a kid pictures in the old magazines of Kurt Douglas with Thez. In L.A., a lot of the wrestlers used to go to the matches, right, and walk some of the wrestlers to the movie actors used to go to the matches. And walk some of the wrestlers to the ring occasionally.
That was Jack Benny and Bob Hope and Crosby with Gorgeous George.
Yeah,
stuff like that. Oh man, there's so much history. Wow. Let's give your email address one more time. I don't know, Jonathan.
Let's Thatcher28 at gmail.com. And like I said, I mentioned the T-shirt. That's true. it was my idea. Jack and Jerry and I were sitting around having an adult beverage and maybe something else. I'm not real sure. And just talking in general. And I had said to them, because I had mentioned to a couple of promoters, I said, because T-shirts had become a big thing with rock bands and this and that. And nobody was in, the promoters weren't interested in, if you realize back in the 70s, all sold nothing, right? Except the boys sold black and white glossy 8x10s at $1 a piece. Other than that, and maybe a little printed program for the show. So anyway, we were talking and I brought it up. Wow. And Jack said, well, why don't we do it? I said, what? He said, why don't the three of us do it? So we did. And it started a landfall, but we weren't good businessmen. And that's a long story anyway. But, we shut it down after we had to pay the buildings, obviously. Some of the buildings took a pretty hefty cut of any merchandise that you sold. And then the promoters realized, hey, maybe these guys got a good idea. Then they wanted a piece, right? So we decided to hell with this.
It almost sounds
because back then it was just white T-shirts with black. The pictures were black. Jerry Lawler did the artwork, by the way.
Did he?
I wish I still had the original. Yeah, I paid him the absorbent fee of $25 to do a pen and ink drawing of Jack and Jerry.
Because those were in the programs. I had different people when I was doing newsletters.
Yeah, I was doing columns for Keitzer for him to run the ad. And we were running the ad in the Atlanta program and in the Charlotte program because I was doing both programs at the time. And then Jerry, I remember the first time Jerry and I took those T-shirts and we did a Thunderbolt Patterson, TP Power. And we took a bunch of those shirts to Fayetteville the first time we got them back from the printers in Charlotte. And we were blown away by the way people jumped on those damn T-shirts. And of course, Jack was traveling all over at the time. Jerry and and it was hard to handle them. And that's why we got into the mail order a little bit. And then we took, I had to take them all. I had to rent an apartment when I went down to Atlanta to work with Gordon and in the office. I had to rent a 2-bedroom apartment because 1 bedroom was just for friggin' T-shirts, for Christ's sake. Right? Because that was our warehouse, was wherever I was living at the time. But, it was, we started in 1972. We put the first wrestling T-shirt ever on the market out.
So it was Briscoe Boosters, and then just a tad bit later, TP Power.
Yeah, and then we tried something. We tried something with Tim Woods Wrestling and with Watts, and it just, we weren't good. Well, here's the crazy thing. You know what we were selling those? We were talking about prices earlier here. We were selling those T-shirts $3.50 a piece.
Oh, no. That's too cheap.
Oh, yes, we were. And making a profit. But then, like I said, I remember Norfolk, the Scope, wanted 40%. Like, you're out of your mind, right? And like I say, when the promoters saw what we were doing, well, now they want a piece. So, and we actually, in the Southeast, I haven't been to Atlanta in a while, but rich department stores I know they were in Richmond, Virginia, and Atlanta, and several other cities around the Southeast. And the Hebners, I don't know, it was Earl or Dave, knew somebody in the rich hierarchy. And we actually talked to them about putting the Briscoe T-shirts into the rich stores. Now, if that had happened, we would have continued on, but it never materialized, so it didn't happen. But
I know what I wanted to say. I don't want to miss a beat on that. I thought Leo Garibaldi said instead of bringing you in, he had sent in the Rebel Bill Ash to take over the Les Thatcher in California role. I don't know if you'd heard that one.
I haven't heard. Leo offered. He was booking down in Mobile for Lee Fields, Dothan, and there for a while, and that was in, I think it's 1974. This was after I'd gone back to Charlotte, because he called me and he said, I'm going. Remember when he bought into Texas or
right,
got involved there in some shape or form. Anyway, he called me and he said, I've recommended you to take the book here. And so I took it. I didn't say what I was doing, but I took a couple of days off and went down and worked a shot and talked to Lee, but we couldn't work it out to where I thought it was a good move for me, so it just never transpired. Yeah, but Leo, Christ, if that, I think if that man came back from the grave, give him a few weeks to watch, see what's going on, and start making some changes, and he could book today. I truly believe that. He was such a creative, great. He really was.
One of the sweetest guys in the world. I haven't told you this before, and Jonathan might get a kick out of it. Jonathan, I'm sorry, I'm motor mouthing here. But at one of Red Bastien's Texas shootouts, Carol let him put on. She would have at her hotel there. I think it was in Fort Worth, not that far out of Dallas. But anyway, and I'm sure you knew that Leo Garibaldi could sing opera. He was actually, passable. So he and Johnny Valentine. Johnny was, in the wheelchair. This must have been about 91. And they're singing. Johnny's singing with Leo Garibaldi. And Reggie Parks looks at me, and I guess he didn't like opera. He goes, "Mike, let's get the hell out of here and go to a titty bar." But he just could not handle it because Leo was hitting those high notes. And
when I had a 3-hour block on Clear Channel, all sports in Cincinnati for 2 years, called Wednesday Night Main Event from 9 to midnight. Call in and guest and so forth. And WWE was in town one Wednesday night for a house show at the old Cincinnati Gardens. And I sent one of my kids out, and they brought Foley, Regal, Road Dogg, and D'Lo Brown down to the studio live. And I somewhere I've got this on tape because I've got a bunch of the tapes from those radio shows. But anyway, on our show, D'Lo and Foley sang "It's a Man's Man." I'm a man's man to Regal. Remember that was his entrance song when he first started with them. Yes. So.
Oh, you got to find that, Lex.
I know. I wish I had you realize all these years, I wish I had all the pictures and programs and magazines. God, I do, but I don't. And, it is what it is. Well, guys, I think we need to take a break, right?
Yeah. And definitely we'll have to set up a part 2 because, like I said, barely even scratched the surface on stuff I wanted to.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to do it again. There's been talk. A friend of mine's talked about me setting up. I've got the reason I can't do pictures right now is when kids tend to send me links to matches and want me to watch them, right? And I couldn't watch it on just a little computer screen, so I've got a 32-inch flat screen for my computer, for my PC here at the house, and so I don't have there's no camera on this TV set, so I'd have to buy a camera and get set up for all that stuff, and I'd have to learn. My grandson says, "Papa, you can learn." I said, "Papa's tired of learning. Are you kidding?" I've been learning for 80 years. Give it a break, man. I don't.
Oh shit!
I don't need. Jonathan, I still have a flip phone. So it's it's 4G, but it's a flip phone, and I love it. Thank you very much. I don't tweet. You know what I tell kids when they see me pull it out? I said, I do an amazing thing with this. What? I said, I talk on it. I know you wouldn't understand that, but I do. I actually talk on this.
Elizabeth, I'm coming.
Guys, it's been fun, and I'll be more than happy to do it again sometime. Seriously.
All good.
Hey, Les, thank you.
We will make it work.
Well, thank you guys, and you guys be safe. Mask up.
Not all football helmets are created equal. Zenith, the industry leader in protective technology, is the only helmet in the game with adaptive head protection featuring a shock suspension system that can move independently from the helmet shell. Headquartered and developed in Detroit, Zenith is committed to player safety and revolutionary innovation. Zenith is proud to protect athletes at every level from Pee Wee to the pros. Learn more about the Zenith difference at zenith.com. That's XENITH.com.
Wow! Thinking your day is bad and really looking to make it worse? Why not try downloading this new classic set of music that will be dropping so far off the charts, there's bound to be injuries. Now that's what I call depressing. It's gonna make those who are even close to having the slightest glimmer of hope want to jump off the highest of planks. For those that are getting Now That's What I Call Depressing, you'll be getting that song that reminds you of that relationship with those cougars, Wrinkled Ladies. For those who weren't really into cougars, but those who had that special friend whilst in cell block 2B, we got for you this clusterfuck that will put you in therapy for years to come. With cheeks wide open. Who the fuck writes this shit? Oh hell, we're still recording this commercial.
Always with you, it cannot be done.
Those that rather have it out than in. This loaded hit will be dropping soon, farthing in the USA. For those who place their order by calling or ordering online, the next 100 folks will receive their choice of either a noose of good quality that won't snap, an installation of a new outlet next to your bathtub so you can now blow dry your hair in a full tub. Or the choice of the right gang to just beat the fuck out of you. Call us today at 1-800-FUCK-THIS.
How's it going, guys? This is Amy Dumas. You guys might know me as Lita, and you are listening to Crazy Train Radio.